Hi, this is David Odell with OdellCompleteConcrete. Here's what we're looking at today, an original asphalt driveway, really a rarity in this area. Almost all of the driveways have been upgraded to concrete at this point. I did see a few in this neighborhood that were still left around. We're going to remove that. We're going to put concrete in. Going down this side yard, we're going to fill in that little gap there where they had left a little planter area. This concrete's really in bad shape through here, as you can see. There's lots of cracks, lots of movement. The pool's got water. The water is nice and clear. The pool has the original plaster. That's going to be redone. That could be another part to this video in the near future, this whole entire backyard. But right now we're going to concentrate on the driveway and the two side yards. So we're going to put concrete down this side yard. They just had some vinyl fencing put in. Now what we're going to do is put the concrete in, clean up these side yard areas. So I'm not going to pour right up against the vinyl post for one reason. The footings there on the post, and they're typically set too high, because they don't like to dig down deep enough to get the footings below grade. So that's always an issue I run into, and I don't like to break the footings because they're kind of small to begin with, and then you start banging them around, everything gets loose. So I just set a form to the inside edge of them. That way I can avoid loosening everything up. Air conditioner is also a new item that was put in here. And it looks like they put the pad at a pretty good level for that AC to set on. I'm going to box it out with a 2x4 instead of pouring up against that little fiberglass pad that they set on. I'll put a little box out around it and fill it up with gravel, for drainage. Also, we ran a drain line. We're going to run a drain line from the backyard out to the curb into the street. And we'll have one area drain at the end of this side yard, because this is all sloping towards the front. So we'll have one area drain down there just to pick up the majority of the water that flows through here. Also, this area drain that I put in, a 3-inch diameter, it's going to go beyond the concrete where we stop pouring. So in the future, when we do this pool deck, we can continue the drain line around the pool and put a bunch of key location area drains here and there. So they have a drainage problem back there right now. No drains, and they've tried to put a few things in there, but it was kind of Mickey Mouse. So none of that stuff's working. They have some French drains, some deck drains and stuff that just went nowhere. Here's what we're looking at, matching this concrete level here, which is going to be coming out in the near future anyway, but it looked like a pretty good point to start since it was 2 inches below floor level. This is some really bad ground right here. So I'm going to run the plate compactor on here. I'm going to soak it for a good, I'll flood this thing when I get done setting it up. Put about 2 inches of water over the whole thing. Let that soak for a few days. And then I'll bring the plate compactor in here and hammer it down. Then it'll be pretty decent soil. Here's the trench. So we're about a foot below grade right here. And as we get towards the front, we go down about 18 inches by the time we're out that fence going towards the front. And then we're on a hillside. This is kind of a hillside home, so it really drops off fast from there to get to the street. Probably about 3-foot drop off actually on the other side of that fence. You can see my one riser off of that drain right there at the end. And that's where a lot of water is going to end up going. Now here's the front of the house. We're going to dig down. We're going to tunnel underneath this city sidewalk here. I'm just going to run a core right through from the curb face and blast it on through, and then drive the 3-inch. And coring this wasn't easy. A lot of them just popped through. It's about a 30-minute job. But in this case, there was a lot of roots and trees in this front yard at one time, and the roots went underneath the city sidewalk, jacked up the sidewalk. You can see where they ran the grinder through many a times, trying to level this sidewalk, you know, stay away from the trip hazards. Well, the roots are still under there, and we found that out the hard way, trying to run this core through. So it took a little bit of ingenuity to get around the roots underneath this sidewalk. A lot of custom crafted tools here, and that's what got through those roots. Now here's a big stump we ran into as well. I mean, you can't see very well because the dirt's over it, but we could definitely feel it. There it is. So we're going to go around it at this point, rather than trying to go through that stump. We're going to go around it and just let it go ahead and rot out. So we had to put basically we're going to run 240, a 45-degree angle to get around this tree stump. Here's the pipe that we pushed under the sidewalk, making the final connection here, and then we're ready to backfill. When we dug this trench, what we had to do is push all the bark back. That way when we move the dirt, it doesn't get into the bark. Then we push the dirt back, then throw the bark over the top. And then that way you'll never know we were here. Here's the asphalt driveway. It's about 1.5 inches thick asphalt. Lasted a good 60 years though. So definitely got your money's worth out of that. But I think the key to this particular, I mean, it doesn't have a lot of structural value, this type of asphalt, but it did have some good road base under it, and that's pretty much what really held this together for that amount of time. And that road base that's under there, they put it in there pretty deep. It was about 6 inches deep, so we only had to take 2 more inches off the top to get our 4-inch depth of concrete. And then we were able to utilize that road base for the base of the new concrete. So we got a really good situation right here for solid driveway. That asphalt peeled up basically just with a little pick work, and it popped right up. Over on the right side of the driveway, we ran into a couple major roots. They're about 10-inch diameter roots that went underneath the asphalt driveway. That hump in the yard over there underneath that stone, I imagine there's some more hidden tree stumps. That's why we happened to find those roots. And here's one of them up here near the top of the driveway that shot on across. So we got to cut it off just to make sure it's down low enough below the concrete. Also, we're going to widen this driveway to the corner of the house. Instead of lining it up with the garage door, we're going to line it up with the outside edge. Right here we're going to cut, you can see, is that a chalk line there? I think so. We're going to cut it there and just remove all the old concrete from the front, so we don't have a lot of mismatched pieces, basically. Here's another area of saw cut, which will all come out when they do the pool deck anyway. So this is kind of a temporary to the back of this house, so it can be broken out again, at least 4 feet of it later, to tie in the backyard. So you have one continuous pour, and everything matches. Alright, here I just have a 12-inch steel 2-stroke chop saw. That's what I'm using to cut the concrete with. Now for the roots, what I did on those removals, I dug around them and then I used a sawzall to cut through them. And then I just pulled the entire chunk out. So you can see that nice road base that was left under that asphalt. And that's going to come in real handy. It should compact real nice. We're going to have a little 4-foot sidewalk return to the gate entrance, side gate entrance. You can see the bark piled up by that tree. That's where we pushed it back. So any dirt work we did didn't get the bark dirty. So when we get finished doing this job, taking the forms out, cleaning everything up, we can push the bark back, and everything will look as it did before we got here. Less the asphalt driveway, of course. There's my screed board set up. I'm just putting that in just to get a visual on my grading. Here's the little stuff we're gonna do here in the side yard. It would have been nice to take all this concrete out, but you know, if it's not in the budget, then you work with what you got. And so this is what we did here. We're just gonna fill in the side. You can see how those vinyl post footings were sitting up real high. That was a real problem, getting a lot of concrete onto that side yard without removing them. There's an old Cuda. I think that's a 69 Cuda in there. It's real sweet. Now this concrete on the side yard, just setting the form was a challenge because the existing concrete kind of looked like a roller coaster going down this side yard, so I had to kind of do the same thing with my 2x4s, which means I had to have the break points in the 2x4s at specific locations to match that sidewalk slope. The main reason we widened this was the trash cans really wouldn't roll through here with, you know, because it would hit the gas meter going out. So this is why we mainly widened, just to get the trash cans in and out a lot easier. That garage floor is raised about 1.5 inches, 2 inches in the middle because it's cracked. So that's going to end up coming out too in the future, and we can cut back and make a straight edge there for the new garage door to come down nice and flat. Well, we got the drain in here. It's all set up. Now I'm gonna go ahead and flood this, let it soak over the weekend, and then hit it with the plate compactor. Well, that's how you stay cool and avoid heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and other heat problems. You just go into the pool. Keep the body temperature right. It was about 100 degrees out here at this point, and probably 60-70% humidity, so this came in real handy in this situation. So we're gonna put 3/8 rebar every 2 foot in both directions. And also I add fiber mesh to all my pours. So we got dual reinforcement going on in all these jobs. Basically what that's going to help do is if there was a tree root or the ground did want to move or do any settling or anything like that, it'll all move as one piece, so you won't get a lot of trip hazards like you see in a lot of these jobs where they don't have rebar. Here's the technique we use to tie up the rebar, just some quick ties, twisty ties on this. We're not going to put dobies or anything, chairs or anything to raise this off the ground at this point. What we'll do is I'll have one guy specifically assigned to raising the rebar as we go backwards with the pump and the rod board. See those angle bars on those corners? That'll help prevent 45-degree angle cracks off of these corners. I like to put those on every corner. And then I also doweled here and there on this sidewalk so we don't get another trip hazard. Because this concrete is pretty expansive, this dirt is expansive soil. That's why you want to get it good and wet before you pour. That way you're at the maximum expansion that soil can be. In case of a heavy rainfall, sprinkler malfunctions, things of that nature, you should be good to go. So yes, it's better to pour on wet, expansive soil than dry. If you pour on dry and then you start watering heavily for sprinklers or whatever it might be, or even rain, that soil is going to swell on you and it's going to blow the concrete up. So it's good to know the soil you're working on so you can do some preventative measures. And if all else fails, put rebar in it and that should do the trick as well. I'm using a 3000 psi on this, and it's a 3/8 pea gravel. We'll just do some regular old wet joints in the side yards, cut those in the day of the pour. Well, this driveway gets a little bit trickier because we're going to do a 45-degree saw cut grid on it on 4-foot spacing with a 1-foot band all the way around the perimeter. So in that case, what I do is I saw cut because that's a lot of joining and you have a limited amount of time to do it. Chances of getting it exactly where you want in that limited amount of time is extremely rare. So we'll saw cut it and get it perfect that way. And this is the first load here. Now we're just waiting on the cleanup load. I believe I had both trucks back to back, so there's no chance of a cold joint. Cold joints aren't good because that means you're going to have a crack there. We have Big Al's concrete pumping here. He's out of Norco. See, I got that one guy with the white hat there. He's strictly rebar pulling up. That's his main objective. He's got the high performance hat on, actually. Now what we're running is a 3.5 foot wide magnesium bull float over it. I add the fiber mesh on the job site. Rather, you can get it added at the batch plant. I'd like to add it on the job site because it saves you about I don't know, $3 or $4 a yard. Now at this point we're running the big blue, and I've got a rocker arm on it, which is nice to have because, as you can see, the pump truck is right there and pump. I can maneuver the pole to go over the top of everything. Now if I didn't have that rocker arm, I would have a lot of trouble bull floating this, going uphill and then pulling it back with everything in the way. So the rocker arm is real nice to have when you get in those tight situations. You can go up and over stuff. And there's your 1/2 inch radius walking edger, 10 inches wide. That gives you a good flat surface. Now these joints I'm putting on the side yard, I continued them from the existing cracks of the old concrete, because that's where they're going to reflect through. A couple wet joints on that little walkway to the gate. Everything else will get saw cut out there in the driveway. Now we're running a funny trowel or whip or crazy trowel. A lot of different names for these tools depending on where you're at, what areas you're working in. Down here at the bottom of the driveway, I have a little 1/2 inch piece of foam expansion. That can be caulked to at a later time, just to seal from water going in between there. But I typically don't seal them up because caulking is another maintenance issue, because it only lasts so long and then you gotta cut it out and redo it. Here's Sam still breaking in his new knee boards. He's checking the cross slope as he goes through here with the 4-foot level. And this is the best time to check to make sure your concrete is sloping the right direction. If you don't check it now, you won't be able to fix it later, except for tearing it out. Here's the broom, the 50% horsehair, 50% nylon. Real nice concrete broom. Put the finishing touches on it. We did a little salt finish over here on this side yard just to kind of match up with the old concrete. Also, you can see how smooth it is before we throw that salt in. Well, even though we have all those holes in it, it still can be a little slippery. So what we'll do is we'll tap it in a little bit. Then I'm going to also broom over the top of that salt just to give it a little more traction. Now it's concrete cure time. Spray some concrete cure out there. This helps from the concrete drying too quickly and pulling some shrinkage cracks. It's nice if you can sit out there and go out there about every 2 hours and water it. But if you're not available to do that, then concrete cure is definitely going to make a big difference. There's a variety of concrete cures. You have to be careful what kind of cure you're spraying too, because if you're going to be staining it or doing any sealing or anything like that after the pour, then you'll have to use the right sealer for that. Some sealers you can't put a stain over the top of. There's other cures that you can, so you have to make sure you know which ones you're using. Here's your layout for your saw cuts the very next day. Now what I want to do is I started in the middle on this driveway. I've got my middle line in both directions perfectly square, and then I'll center my square in the middle. So going out from there, every square will end in the same spot at the top of the driveway and at the sides. Also, what I'm going to do on these sides, I'm going to end these square points exactly on the band, so there's no little remnants of a partial square hitting the bands. Everything will be full size, ending right on the bands. And you can't do that when it's wet. Like if you were to wet tool joint it, you're not going to be able to lay that out. But in this case, I could take a little time and get a perfect layout where every square hits perfectly on the bands on both sides. Now, if you were going to lay tile, this is how you'd want to do your layout as well. Same concept. I cut my band in first. That way when I end my cuts, I can end right on the saw cut. I could have potentially tried to cut these angle cuts and just end it at my chalk line on the band, but it's risky, so you should cut the bands first. These turned out to be, I think, about 4 foot 5 inch squares, I think is what I ended up coming up with to make it work on all the side of the driveway intersecting points. And then every other saw cut that meets, I'll continue a line through the band, as you can see there. Now you notice on the sides of the driveway the squares end at the band. And then I was able to continue that other cut through the band. So whatever line it decides to crack on, it'll come out through the band on the one cut. So you can line up the sides, but you can't line up the top and bottom unless you make rectangles. So that's how it's done. A perfect layout, 45-degree angle grid, intersecting all points on the band. So you can see that big crack in the garage floor, and that's going to be coming out in the future, probably with the pool deck. There's that little box that I was talking about around the AC. That way the water can drain. There's a 3-inch drain at the end of this run. Everything slopes to that. So most of the water will go right in there, and anything that doesn't will just go off the sides. This yard's on a little bit of an angle to the house. That's why it kind of looks so skewed there at the AC. I think we're narrower at one end of the house than the other to the property line. Either that or the vinyl fence isn't straight on the property line, one or the other. Thank you for watching my video, and if you like it, subscribe, and make sure if you do want to see the latest and greatest videos to ring that little bell next to the subscribe button, then you'll get the latest and greatest updates. Thanks, bye.